I stood there watching my champagne glass shake in my hand, feeling 200 pairs of eyes burning into my skin like hot coals. The laughter rolled over me in waves sharp, cutting, the kind that sticks to your bones long after the sound fades. My son Quincy stood at the front of that massive ballroom, microphone in hand, grinning like he'd just told the world's funniest joke. Except the joke was me. "Everyone, that's him right there. The old guy in the corner, wearing the suit from 1995. Quincy's voice boomed through the speakers, and another wave of laughter crashed down. My face burned. I tried to smile, tried to pretend this was all in good fun, but my lips wouldn't cooperate. They just trembled. My dad, Preston Whitmore, worked his whole life in maintenance, Quincy continued, and my stomach dropped. "No, please, son, don't do this." He cleaned toilets, mopped floors, fixed broken sinks, took out other people's garbage. Some guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others leaned forward, hungry for more. Veronica, my new daughter-in-law, sat beside Quincy with a small smile playing at her lips. Her parents nodded along like this was perfectly acceptable dinner conversation. "And you know what?" Quincy raised his glass higher. "I'm actually grateful. For one brief, stupid moment, my heart lifted. Maybe this was going somewhere good. Maybe. Because watching him scrub his way through life, coming home smelling like pine sol and sweat, taught me exactly what kind of man I never wanted to be." The air left my lungs. Someone gasped. Several people looked away, but plenty more laughed nervous, awkward laughter that somehow hurt worse than the cruel kind. Dad always told me, "Work hard, be humble, help others." You know where that got him? A one-bedroom apartment in the cheap part of town and a 20-year-old suit. Quincy gestured at me with his champagne flute, sloshing liquid onto the white tablecloth. Meanwhile, Veronica's family built an empire by being smart, being ambitious, by understanding that nice guys finish last. I couldn't breathe. The room tilted sideways. This was my boy, my son, the child I worked 3 jobs to feed, the teenager I stayed up with during exam weeks, the young man whose college tuition I paid by taking double shifts for 5 straight years. The wedding I'd just paid $85,000 for. "So here's to you, Dad," Quincy shouted. "The janitor who showed me that dignity doesn't pay the bills. Thanks for being my cautionary tale." He drank. Some guests joined him. Others stared at their plates like they'd find escape routes in the china patterns. I sat frozen, a statue made of shame and heartbreak. My hands wouldn't move. My voice wouldn't come. I just sat there while my only child tore me apart in front of strangers, in front of his new wife's wealthy family, in front of people who'd spent my money on prime rib and champagne. Veronica leaned over and kissed Quincy's cheek. Reward for a job well done. Then everything changed. "Excuse me." The voice came from somewhere near the back. Deep, powerful, angry. A chair scraped loudly against the marble floor. I looked up through my blur of held-back tears and saw a tall man standing, his face twisted in shock. He wore a suit that probably cost more than my car. His dark hair had silver streaks at the temples. Everyone turned to stare at him. "Did you?" The man's voice cracked. He cleared his throat, tried again. "Did you just say your father's name is Preston Whitmore?" Quincy's smile faltered. Yeah? Why?" The man pushed past his table, moving toward the front of the room. His eyes were locked on me, not on Quincy, on me. And something in his expression made my chest tighten. Recognition? Disbelief? I didn't know him. I'd never seen this man before in my life. "Preston Whitmore," the man repeated, now walking faster. People moved aside to let him through. "Building superintendent. Lived on Morrison Street 23 years ago?" My mouth fell open. Morrison Street. That was how did he? The man's champagne glass slipped from his hand. It fell in slow motion. spinning through the air, catching the chandelier light. Then it hit the marble floor and shattered, the sound like a gunshot in the suddenly silent ballroom. "My God," the man whispered. He was standing right in front of my table now, towering over me, and tears were streaming down his face. "It really is you." I stared up at him, confused, terrified, hopeful. Behind him, Quincy stood frozen at the microphone, his mouth hanging open. The man's voice broke as he reached for me with shaking hands. "You saved my life." The stranger's words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. "You saved my life." 200 people held their breath. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. "I'm sorry," I managed to whisper. "Do I know you?" The man wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, smearing tears across his face. He didn't seem to care that everyone was watching. "You wouldn't remember me. I was nobody back then. Just a broke kid with nothing left to lose." He straightened up, composing himself, and turned to face the crowd. His voice grew stronger, more controlled. "My name is Darius Chen Rodriguez. I'm the CEO of Tech Vanguard Industries." A ripple went through the room. People whispered. I saw Veronica's face go completely white. She knew that name. Of course she knew it. He was her boss. Darius reached down and took the microphone right out of Quincy's hand. My son stood there like a puppet with cut strings, unable to move or speak. 23 years ago, Darius said into the microphone, his voice filling every corner of that enormous ballroom. I was 22 years old. My mother had just died from cancer. I dropped out of college to take care of her, spent every penny I had on her treatment. When she passed, I had nothing. No money, no family, no reason to keep going. The room was so quiet, I could hear the ice melting in people's water glasses. I was living in a rundown apartment building on Morrison Street. Couldn't even afford the rent. The building superintendent, he pointed at me, and every eye followed his finger, was this man, Preston Whitmore. My mind raced backward through the years. Morrison Street, 23 years ago. That old brick building with the broken elevator and leaking pipes. I'd managed that place for 7 years before. Then it hit me. The kid on the roof. "Oh my God," I breathed. "You're the kid on the roof." Darius finished for me. His voice cracked again. I went up there on a Tuesday night, January 14th. It was snowing. I was going to jump. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Veronica grabbed the edge of the table, her knuckles white. Quincy's face had gone gray. "I stood at the edge for 20 minutes, Darius continued. Then the roof door opened, and this man, he gestured at me again, walked out, carrying 2 cups of hot chocolate. I remembered. God help me, I remembered it all now. The skinny Asian kid with hollow eyes and frozen tears on his cheeks. How he'd flinched when I approached. How I'd just sat down next to him on that freezing roof and handed him the warm cup without saying a word. He didn't call the police, didn't lecture me, didn't tell me life was precious or any of that stuff people say. Darius's voice grew softer. He just sat there with me in the snow for 3 hours, let me talk when I was ready, listened when I cried. And when I finally stepped back from the edge, he took me to his apartment, gave me his couch, and made me scrambled eggs at 4 in the morning. I felt my own tears coming now. That scared kid. I'd let him stay for 2 months while he got back on his feet. Preston let me live with him rent-free for 8 weeks, Darius said. He helped me get a job at a tech startup his friend was launching, loaned me money for interview clothes, drove me to appointments, never asked for a single thing in return. He paused, swallowing hard. When I finally moved out and tried to pay him back, he refused. Said, just help somebody else someday. The silence in that room was absolute, complete. You could have heard a feather hit the floor. I built my entire life on the foundation this man gave me, Darius said, his voice rising. Tech Vanguard Industries is worth $3 billion. We employ 12,000 people. I've spent 20 years trying to find Preston Whitmore to thank him properly. I hired investigators, posted on every social media platform. Nothing worked. He turned to look at me, tears running freely now. And tonight, I find out he's been here all along, the father of my employee's husband. He turned slowly to face Veronica, and his expression transformed from grateful to ice-cold in a heartbeat. Veronica, he said quietly, last month, when you submitted your wedding invitation to HR for the +1 approval, I asked about your fiancé's family. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but the microphone caught every word. You told me his father was dead. Veronica's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. No sound came out. You told me, Darius repeated, louder now, that Quincy's father died 10 years ago. Quincy's head snapped toward his wife. You what? Veronica stood up so fast, her chair fell backward with a crash that made everyone jump. I can explain. Veronica's voice came out high and desperate, nothing like the cold, controlled woman I'd met 6 months ago. Darius, I can explain. It's not this isn't what it looks like. Then what is it? Darius's voice could have cut through steel. He still held the microphone, and his words echoed off the crystal chandeliers. Because it looks like you lied to your CEO. It looks like you were ashamed of your husband's father. It looks like you're exactly the kind of person I don't want representing my company. Quincy grabbed Veronica's arm. You told people my dad was dead? Are you insane? She yanked her arm away, and I saw something ugly flash across her face. The mask was coming off. Don't you dare judge me. You're the one who spent 6 months complaining about how embarrassing he was, how he showed up to our engagement party in discount store clothes, how he talked about fixing pipes at dinner with my parents. That's different than telling people he's dead, Veronica. Is it? She spun on him, her white dress swirling. You just stood up here and told 200 people he was worthless. At least I had the decency to spare him the humiliation. The crowd erupted in whispers. Phones came out. I saw at least a dozen people recording everything. This was going to be all over the internet by morning. Spare him? Quincy's voice rose to a shout. You didn't spare him anything. You erased him. An older woman at a front table stood up suddenly. She wore diamonds that probably cost more than my apartment and had Veronica's same sharp nose. Her mother. Now just wait one moment. My daughter wouldn't lie without good reason. If she said the man was dead, perhaps she was speaking metaphorically. Dead to society. Dead to success. That comment hit me like a punch to the gut. Dead to society. Is that what I was to these people? But then another voice cut through the chaos. A man about my age, wearing thick glasses, stood up from a middle table. Excuse me, Preston Whitmore. I know that name from somewhere else. Everyone turned to stare at him. He pulled out his phone, fingers flying across the screen. I thought I recognized it. Preston Whitmore, real estate. There was an article in Business Monthly about 15 years ago. He looked up from his phone, eyes wide. You owned the Morrison Street Properties Group, 43 buildings across the city. The whispers grew louder. Quincy's face went from red to white in seconds. That can't be right, Veronica's father sputtered. He's a janitor, a maintenance man. I was a building superintendent, I said quietly. My voice surprised me steady, calm, even though my insides were shaking. But yes, I owned those buildings. Bought the first one when I was 25. Built the business over 30 years. Quincy stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Dad, what are you talking about? You lived in that tiny apartment. You drove that ancient truck. You wore the same jacket for 10 years. I sold everything 5 years ago, I said. The words felt heavy in my mouth. After your mother died, you were struggling with her loss, drinking too much, lost your job. You said you needed a fresh start in a new city, away from all the memories. I looked at my son, really looked at him. So I sold the business, paid off your debts, gave you money to relocate and start over. You said you wanted to build something yourself, without my help. I respected that. Moved into a small place. Lived simply. The man with the glasses was scrolling frantically on his phone. Holy, the sale price is public record. Morrison Street Properties Group sold for $12 million. The gasps this time were louder. Someone's fork clattered to their plate. 12 million? Veronica's voice came out as a squeak. Quincy stumbled backward, gripping the edge of the head table for support. Dad? Why didn't you tell me? You never asked, I said simply. You were so proud of making it on your own. I didn't want to take that away from you. And after tonight, my voice finally cracked. After you told everyone I was your cautionary tale, I guess I understand why you needed to believe I was just a poor janitor. It made your success feel bigger. Darius stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder. His voice was gentler now. Preston, where did all that money go? I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a cream-colored envelope. My wedding gift. I'd placed it on the gift table when I arrived, but retrieved it during Quincy's toast, planning to leave it on my table before walking out. I held it up. Most of it went to making sure my son had every advantage. The rest, I placed the envelope on the head table in front of Quincy, was going to be his inheritance. Quincy reached for the envelope with shaking hands. He opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper, a property deed. That's a commercial building downtown, I said. Worth about $500,000. It was going to be yours. After tonight, I'm not so sure anymore. Veronica suddenly lunged for the deed. Her face transformed with greed. Quincy, don't touch it, Quincy screamed at her. And then she said the words that ended everything. Are you stupid? Veronica shrieked, her carefully painted face twisting into something unrecognizable. That's $500,000. Who cares what you said about him? Apologize and take the money. The ballroom went dead silent. Even the waiters stopped moving. Quincy stared at his bride like he'd never seen her before. What did you just say? You heard me! Veronica's voice grew louder, more desperate. Her perfect wedding persona had shattered completely. Do you know what we could do with $500,000? The penthouse I wanted. The Tesla. The vacation home in Aspen. Your father's feelings don't matter compared to... The crack of Quincy's hand slamming on the table made everyone jump. Get out! What? Get out of my sight! Quincy's voice broke. You don't give a damn about me. You just wanted the money you thought I'd inherit someday. That's why you were so interested when I told you my dad used to own property, isn't it? Before I said he'd sold everything? Veronica's silence was answer enough. Darius's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Veronica, consider this your notice. You're fired. Her head snapped toward him. You can't fire me. I'm your top analyst. I brought in 3 major accounts this quarter alone. I can and I will. I don't employ liars. Darius's face was stone. And I certainly don't employ people who measure human worth in dollar signs. Clear out your desk Monday morning. Security will escort you. Veronica's mother shot to her feet. This is outrageous. My daughter is the victim here. She was tricked into marrying beneath her station. We'll sue for... For what? Darius turned his cold gaze on her. Your daughter lied about her husband's family. She married him under false pretenses about his inheritance. If anyone has grounds to sue, it's Quincy. Veronica's father stood now too, his face purple with rage. We paid for half this wedding, we demand. I'll write you a check, I heard myself say. All eyes turned to me. However much you contributed, I'll pay you back tonight. Then you can leave. The man's mouth worked soundlessly for a moment. Then he grabbed his wife's arm. Come on, Helen. We're not staying where our family is disrespected. He jabbed a finger at Veronica. You fix this mess. Do you understand me? You fix it, or you're not welcome in our home. They stormed out, Veronica's mother's heels clicking like gunshots on the marble floor. About 20 other guests stood and followed them. Veronica's friends, her extended family, people who'd clearly decided which side they were on. The remaining guests sat frozen, unsure whether to stay or go, unable to look away from the disaster unfolding. Veronica stood alone now, her face crumpling. Mascara ran down her cheeks in black rivers. "Quincy, please. I love you. I do. I got confused. Your father seems so." "So what?" Quincy's voice was barely a whisper now. "So poor? So beneath you? So embarrassing?" She reached for him. He stepped back. "I worked my whole life to be different from my dad," Quincy said, and his voice cracked on every word. "I wanted to be successful, respected, rich. I wanted people to look at me and see somebody important." He turned to look at me, tears streaming down his face. "And the whole time, my father was the most successful man in the room. He just didn't need to show it off." I felt something break open in my chest. My boy. My stupid, foolish, hurting boy. "Dad," Quincy whispered, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I wanted to go to him. Wanted to wrap him in my arms like I did when he was small and the world seemed too big and scary. But I couldn't move. The hurt was too fresh, too raw. "Sorry doesn't undo what you said," I managed. "Sorry doesn't erase standing up here and telling everyone I was worthless. That dignity doesn't pay bills. That you learned what not to be from watching me." "I know." Quincy's shoulders shook. "I know. And I hate myself for it. I don't know what happened to me, Dad. Somewhere along the way, I forgot everything Mom taught me. Everything you taught me. I got so caught up in trying to impress people who don't matter that I destroyed the one person who does." I picked up the envelope with the deed and held it. My hand trembled. "Your mother and I had one rule when we raised you. One thing we agreed on above everything else." My voice broke. "We said we'd love you unconditionally, but we'd never let you become cruel. Never let you become the kind of person who steps on others to feel tall." "Dad, please." "I failed," I said. "I failed you. I failed Margot. I should have stopped you years ago when I saw you changing. When I watched you start caring more about labels than people. When you stopped visiting your mother's grave because you were too busy networking." Quincy's face crumpled completely. He fell to his knees right there in the middle of the ballroom, his expensive tuxedo rumpling, his hands covering his face. "Please don't leave me. Dad, please. I'll do anything. I'll change. I swear I'll change." I stood up slowly, my old knees protesting. The envelope felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I walked toward the exit. Behind me, Quincy's voice rose to a scream. "Dad, no, please!" I stopped walking. My hand was on the brass door handle, cool against my palm. Behind me, I could hear my son sobbing deep, broken sounds that no parent should ever have to hear. 200 people watched in silence, waiting to see what I would do. I'd dreamed of this day for 32 years. The day my boy got married. I'd imagined walking him down the aisle since he was 3 years old, and declared he was going to marry his preschool teacher. Margot and I used to laugh about it, planning the toast I'd give, the dance we'd share, the moment I'd welcome his spouse into our family. This wasn't that dream. This was a nightmare. But when I closed my eyes, I didn't see the cruel man at the microphone. I saw a 6-year-old boy crying because kids at school made fun of his thrift store shoes. I saw a teenager staying up late to help me sort invoices because he knew I was tired. I saw a 20-year-old holding his mother's hand in the hospital, whispering, "I love you," over and over as she slipped away. That boy was still in there somewhere, buried under layers of ambition and shame and misguided priorities, but still there. I turned around. Quincy was on his knees in the middle of the aisle, his face buried in his hands, shoulders heaving. Veronica stood off to the side, frozen, mascara streaked, and lost. The guests were statues. barely breathing. I walked back slowly. My shoes echoed on the marble with each step. When I reached Quincy, I stood over him, looking down at the top of his head. "Stand up, son." He looked up at me, face destroyed, eyes red and swollen. "Dad, Stand up!" He got to his feet shakily, unable to meet my eyes. He was taller than me, now had been since he turned 16, but he looked small, broken. "Look at me," I said quietly. He raised his eyes. In them, I saw everything. The shame, the regret, the desperate hope that somehow, some way, I might forgive him. "I'm going to tell you something your mother told me once," I said. "When you were 8 years old, you stole $20 from my wallet to buy a video game. Remember?" He nodded, tears still flowing. "You felt so guilty that you threw up that night. Couldn't eat for 2 days. Finally confessed and offered to do chores for a year to pay me back." I paused, my own eyes burning now. "Your mother said to me, 'Preston, he's a good boy who made a bad choice.' That's different from being a bad boy." I didn't understand the difference back then. I do now. Quincy's breath hitched. "You're not a bad person, Quincy, but you've made bad choices. Really bad ones. You let shame about where you came from turn into cruelty toward the person who loved you most. You married someone who cared more about money than character. You spent years pushing me away because I reminded you of a life you wanted to forget." "I know," he whispered. "God, Dad, I know. But here's the thing about being a parent," I continued, and my voice finally broke. "I don't love you because you're perfect. I don't love you because you're successful or impressive or because you say the right things. I love you because you're mine. Because I held you when you were 2 minutes old. Because your first word was Dada. Because you're half of the woman I loved more than breathing." Quincy's face crumpled again, but this time, he didn't look away. "Your mother's not here to tell you this, so I will," I said. "She'd be heartbroken by what you've become. But she'd also tell you that it's never too late to change. Never too late to remember who you really are underneath all this." I gestured at the expensive venue, the designer tuxedo, the whole mess performance. I held out the envelope with the deed. Quincy stared at it like it might burn him. "This is still yours," I said. "Not because you deserve it. You don't. But because I'm your father. And fathers don't give up on their sons. Not when there's still hope." "Dad, I can't." "Take it," I said firmly. "But here's the deal. You sell that building, and you use the money to figure out who you want to be. Not who Veronica wanted. Not who her parents expected. Not the person who's so desperate to prove he's better than his janitor father that he forgets his janitor father owned 43 buildings." A small, broken laugh escaped Quincy's throat. "You were never just a janitor." "No," I agreed. "But there'd be no shame if I was. Your mother cleaned houses before we started the business. Some of the best people I know empty trash and mop floors. They're not cautionary tales, Quincy. They're the backbone of everything." Quincy took the envelope with shaking hands. Then he dropped it, lunged forward, and wrapped his arms around me. He buried his face in my shoulder and sobbed like he was 5 years old again. Like his whole world had just ended and rebuilt itself in the same moment. I held my son and let him cry. Over his shoulder I saw Darius watching with tears in his eyes. I saw guests wiping their faces. I saw Veronica standing alone, realizing she'd lost everything. "I'm so sorry," Quincy kept repeating. "I'm so sorry." "I know," I whispered back. "Now let's go home."